The expressed views of the guests on this podcast are theirs alone and not necessarily endorsed by the host, TWBC, or any associated sponsor. Conversations that are robust yet balanced, on point and to the point. You are listening to the talk of tournament water skiing. This is the TWBC podcast. And now, here's your host, Tony Lightfoot.
Well, greetings one and all, and welcome to the TWBC podcast. My name is Tony Lightfoot, and this is going to be a rather special episode because we have two of the foremost water skiing athletes ever to compete in competition over the last 20 or even 30 years now. And with that, I say hello to my good friends Freddy Krueger and Karen Truelove. How are you doing, both of you?
Doing great, Tony.
Doing good.
All right, then. So we're here, not too far away from the center of Orlando. I won't go into the specifics, but looking outside the lake, over towards your ramp and slalom course and everything, Freddie and Karen, was this the dream when you started out?
Absolutely. I mean, to live here, you mean?
Yeah, to be in this kind of surround where you had your own lake, your ramp, and your slalom course, and all the trappings that go along with it.
I mean, for me, I don't know that I actually, wrote it all out on paper like that. But I mean, yes, like once you, get here and see, the environment that we're in, I mean, it's exactly what I dreamt that I would do one day. Yeah,
a big difference to where you started your skiing career over in Decatur, right?
Oh yeah, grew up on a public lake, but we had a club lake that was about 8 miles away, and it was more of a private man-made lake kind of a setup. Then transferring there, did a little time at NLU on the Bayou, and then down to Jay's, which again going back to man-made lakes. So that transition to the Florida scene, where you're out on the bigger public lakes and that, but at that time, knowing that that's what the Pro Tour was, that's what the World Cup was, it was the perfect fit. And today, a lot of the tournaments have migrated again more towards maybe man-made lakes, other than like the Masters and Moonboon, events like that. But I still love this natural feel of being on a natural lake.
Okie dokie. You seem to have read my mind, because the next question I was going to ask both of you is how you two met up. And you mentioned NLU, which today is Louisiana Monroe, the Warhawks. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so let's try and pick it up from there a little bit. I mean, you both decided to ski collegiately in northeast Louisiana, and kind of take it from there. I'll point to you on this one, Karen.
I mean, it feels like a lifetime ago. I mean, I was at Chapel Hill in North Carolina, and then my very good friend April Coble, she had decided she wanted to try. I mean, we were part of the ski club there. It was more of a club than a ski team, and she was dating somebody at the time that was going to NLU, and I guess just sort of as the natural events, she was like, hey, I want to go down there and hang out with him for a semester. Do you want to go too? I mean, it sounds so, casual, to say it, but that really was just sort of the way it happened. We did our research, made sure the classes would transfer over, because I didn't want to lose like any credit, because my intention was always to come back to North Carolina. Mm-hmm. And yeah, when I was there, you spend all the time with the team, and I mean, Freddie was our dorms were across from each other, so we just naturally ended up kind of hitting it off and spending time together. And I mean, at that point we were, just like a friendship growing, throughout that semester. And it wasn't really till later, that following summer, after we were together, almost every day, and then we were separated, that we, realized like, hey, we want to take the friendship beyond that.
Okay, this was around about 1995, 95. Around about the same time that you, Freddie, were starting to win Pro Tour starts. But your recollection on how this pairing came about. We've heard from Karen. What about your side of the deal?
No, that was it. We like she said, we had dorm rooms across from each other, and I think we had one class that actually we were supposed to be in together, and I ended up dropping it because I couldn't handle it.
What was that class?
Geography or geology or something like that. I would come home from class, and I would keep set my door open, and then when I'd kind of look out, and when she came home and was done studying or whatever, she'd leave her door open, and I'd kind of look up, and I could see her door a little easier than she could see mine. So I said, "Oh, door's open," and I'd go up and see what she was doing. And Karen, she actually had a full ride, and part of that full ride was a meal ticket, and so she had more money basically on her meal card than I did. So we went to dinner. She bought me a lot of dinners. In fact, I'm probably just now catching up. Yeah, but we ate dinner together probably 4 nights a week just so I could eat, enough. And, but yeah, just, an amazing friendship that blossomed. But, that time apart, that semester, when she went back to Chapel Hill, it would have been a spring, basically like from Christmas through the spring, I moved down to Jay's. And, so much going on and getting used to, completely different culture, going to LSU, really focused on the skiing and that. But, man, it was very evident to me that, hey, I was missing my best friend. And so then we saw each other. I think the Orlando Pro Tour stop was the first one that year, and we got to see each other a little bit there. And then the second one was in Shreveport, Louisiana. It was real early June, I think.
The same year, 1995.
This is 95, yeah. So Karen was skiing in the prelims. I guess we both had to ski the qualifying round or whatever.
It was probably a Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Yeah. Deal. And so we skied, and I made it, through obviously, and then Karen
I did not.
Yeah, so but before she left, we had a talk that, hey, let's do this, let's be exclusive. And so she got in a car and headed back to North Carolina, and I stuck around and won my first Pro Tour stop. So literally the day after, we started dating, I won my first Pro Tour stop, and she's, literally been there for every single one of them.
Well, I can certainly subscribe to the little bit of uplift of emotions, that came along from something like that. I didn't realize that it had that much of an impact upon your jump in to win your first Pro Tour stop and take down the likes of who was it? Roberge, Duval, Carrington, Swanson, Ellis as well. Jarrett Llewellyn, Clooney in the final as well, probably.
Sure we had. It's a good point. I'm not sure who all was in that final. I'd have to go back and look, but it was, everybody was there. I mean, that was the tour was definitely legit at that time. So, it was a full field.
Yeah, I mean, I hate I missed that, because with it being in Louisiana, like all of the Louisiana gang was there, and I remember seeing the video 4 or 5 weeks later, because back then that's about how long it took for to catch up and actually see the footage.
You surely knew that he'd won by that time,
right?
Yeah,
he called me. I remember. I mean, I can remember that very clearly. I can remember when he called and said, "Guess what?" And I won. And I was like, I couldn't believe it. I mean, it wasn't what I expected. He's always told me, he had always told me when we were at NLU, I'm going to do this. This is, I'm going to get there. I'm going to get there. But when he told me he won, it was...
Well, and it didn't fit the bill, because it was the first time, it was the first check I ever made at a pro tournament. It was the first time I'd ever made a final. So, it's just not the way it's supposed to work.
Would you care to disclose how much that check was for?
I think at the time it was maybe $3,500 was first place. I think we were jumping. I think in 95, we were at about a $12,000 purse. And then going into that next year was when we did the H2O Pro men's jump union, if you would.
Yeah, as it were.
And we ended up standing strong, and that bumped the prize money to $15,000 for men's jump. I think we were the only event that had that much.
Nice.
And it's kind of, unfortunately, it's kind of hovered there and kind of stayed there. But yeah, in 1996, we went from 12 grand to 15 grand.
Okay. While you guys were at NLU, this was during the spring semester of 1995, or was it the fall?
Fall.
The fall semester.
Fall of 94.
Yeah.
Fall of 94, going into 1995. What was it like coaching each other at that point? Was there? I mean, obviously you're primarily a slalom skier, and I think you skied overall.
I was skiing overall at that time.
You were skiing overall.
At that time, we really didn't ski together per se. I mean, we were at the lake together, but we weren't. I mean, I certainly was not in the boat coaching you for jumping.
No,
and God knows I didn't want him driving me slalom.
That bad, huh?
Well, you could probably say the same thing about me driving him jump at that time. So we've learned a lot in these last few years.
Thank God for cruise control. I mean, again, at that point in time, I knew who Karen was, just because as a junior she had, was in the magazine. Some had made some teams. In '94, I actually met her, as in like a hey, shook her hand, kind of thing, or waved from across the room kind of thing.
Okay.
And we actually ended up at lunch together, kind of sitting on the same end of the table, but we weren't. That was kind of about as close as we got. So when she came to school, I mean, I remember being excited that she was coming, obviously, because we were excited about our chances, to be the number one team in the country and win. But it was really more about, just us getting to, I didn't know her well enough that I was just going to jump in and be coaching her. And you got to understand, too, at that time, I wasn't, I wasn't even... I might have been our best jumper at that time, maybe not. And I certainly wasn't anywhere on the depth chart for slalom and trick. So, we had better, more experienced skiers, coaches, etc. that, she was going to get input from than me at that time.
Okay, so we moved back to 1995. Obviously, you'd moved in back in June of that year to North Carolina. You continued to stay down at Jay's. So, what was that summer like, Karen? I mean, I can imagine the phone calls going between you two, and just trying to stay in touch, and trying to encourage each other from afar.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel like we took it sort of one step at a time, if you will. I mean, I wasn't making big plans at that time. I mean, I didn't foresee, we're just going to pick up and like move to Florida together or anything. I didn't see that at that time. I mean, honestly, we had a pretty good amount of tournaments we were seeing each other at. And, I had a strong pull, to stay in North Carolina at that time, was really, very close to my family. And yeah, I mean, he was still, had commitments, and he was still in school. I was kind of finishing up. I had graduated, and at that point, I think I was taking a few classes because I was kind of, what do I want to do with my education, So, yeah, I don't know. We were, just a lot of phone calls and, see each other at the tournaments. And I was at, the Coble Ski School had just started. That might have been, I don't know if that was their first year or second year opening. So I was actually working down there that summer.
I think that would have been the first year, because I actually went to Coble's in the summer of, what was it, 1996 or something like that.
I couldn't remember. I remember you being there, so, or us being there together a little bit. So,
yeah.
I mean, I was kind of busy sort of just doing what I've always, done, my normal patterns or whatever. And then as time goes on, I mean, I was maturing, more adult things and then we, I think like when you were asking about us dating, or our friendship at NLU, I don't really necessarily remember us talking about a lot of ski stuff. We were just really enjoying each other as just, human beings or what, it wasn't all about skiing. And then I think as we started dating, then we started sharing more and more about, what we want to do with skiing and maybe some dreams and make plans and things like that.
Yes. You still had a lot of time to go before you graduated, right? I mean, because at that time you was at school, and then you moved down to Jay's, and then from there you got into the MBA graduate program. Am I right on that one?
No, I was just that slow getting through school. No, when I transferred from NLU to LSU. I had completed 3 semesters of school, and I lost a semester's worth of classes. It didn't transfer.
Wow.
Which my folks were not crazy about. But my dad did like the idea of, graduating from, a Louisiana, an LSU versus an NLU. And I had free room and board living at Jay's, so it kind of offset the cost difference. But so I graduated in December of 98 with just a bachelor's degree. And I remember probably December of 97 walking into the counselor's office and just saying, hey, look on your sheet there and tell me what gets me out of school fastest. I'm ready to I'm making a little money skiing. I'm ready to be done with this. How do I get out of the school? What's the fastest route out? And, I had spent some time looking at like an accounting degree and stuff like that. And he said, well, the fastest way out's marketing. I said, great, switch me to marketing and let's get this done. And, because Karen, she was done with school but she wasn't going to necessarily move back and us live at Jay's. So I knew the quicker I could get out, then the quicker we could be together and the quicker I could move on to, trying to chase this dream of being a pro skier.
All right, so you did all of that at Jay's, and in my earliest recollection, I did a little bit of work at Jay's as well. Just full disclaimer there, and both you and Freddy were spending your weekends at Pro Tour stops and stuff like that. This is where it gets a little bit sideways, because not only was Freddy jumping at that time, but you were also trying to be a professional wakeboarder at that time. How did that shape up?
I blame Ryan Wynn for that mainly. He was a young man from Texas that came over and was in high school, moved in with Jay and Ann. And he was a 3-event skier. That's why he was there. But he got into wakeboarding, fell in love with Tara Hamilton. And the next thing I knew, he was, pulling me into helping him with his riding and whatever. And then the next thing I knew, I was doing it. And it just, at the time, it seemed like such a good idea. And the idea was nobody had really successfully crossed over and from being a skier to a wakeboarder and been able to do both. We had Jeremy Kovac, who, as far as I know, is the only person to ever make a slalom final. I think he did we called it the 3-event at the tour at that time. He made a jump final, a slalom final, and a wakeboard final in Indianapolis. And so, but he was only ever known as a wakeboarder, and I kind of thought I could bridge that gap. And I had a couple of good events. I won a Moomba Masters one year, finished 4th in a World Championships. I made 6 of 8 Pro Tour finals one year. I don't think you could ever say I was necessarily a contender, but I was, a legitimate finalist week in, week out kind of thing. But just the abuse on the body in a different way from what jumping was doing was getting kind of tearing me down. And then, but when we moved to Florida in that December of 98, Karen had a Pro Star and I had a wakeboard boat. I had an X Star. And so we were going out to the lake that Ronnie Barton lives on today, Corner Lake. And we would pull Karen tricks.
And
slalom. That's right. Tricks and slalom. And I would wakeboard. And then we would go back to Dan Reeney's lake. I can't remember, Long Lake. and we would take a jump set. And right after we bought this place, still had the X-Star when we were here. Mastercraft the tour had split, and it was getting harder for me to do both. And Mastercraft at that time with Skip Gilkerson, they just weren't comfortable. They didn't love the idea of me doing both. They kind of wanted me to choose one or the other, and that was a very short conversation. And so that I don't know, that probably would have been around 2000, 2001, I guess, that I just hung up the wakeboard and went back to focusing on jumping. But I mean, Karen, she drove the hell out of that wakeboard boat for, I was out there doing, double backflips and on double ups and all of that. I mean, there's a lot of people that know she can drive the hell out of a jump boat, but she drove that wakeboard boat as good as anybody out there.
And I mean as well, there's that whole cultural thing, that cultural separation that comes between water skiing and wakeboarding, because I knew and Jay will affirm this, that you try to get stylistically, similar to some of the wakeboarders out there, which didn't meet much of an approval from Jay or probably even your parents at this time.
The woman sitting next to me honestly was incredibly patient, I guess, through those times, you would say, because there was a dealer days in Tennessee where I showed up with bleach white hair. I had a shaved head at one point in time, but that was before wakeboarding. But earrings and that was wakeboarding, right? Like it was as much about the culture and the look. It was much less about the maneuver or the trick that you did, and it was more about how you did it and how you looked doing it. And so if you were going to play the game, you had to go all in. And so I did it for a while, and I enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun doing it. I met some amazing people, Sean Murray and guys like that I'm still friends with, Parks, and it is an amazing group of people. But the other thing too was, ironically, at that time I would have been 26, 27. I was kind of an old man on that tour, because a lot of these kids, Parks would have been 14, 15, it was, so, talk about sticking out like a sore thumb. And so blending in was a good thing. It was helping me in that aspect, but I wasn't wired right for it. I didn't have the creativity that I think wakeboarding, I always said wakeboarding was less of a sport and more of an art form. In my mind, a sport is, I ran more buoys than you did. I jumped further than you did. I ran from this spot to that spot in a faster time than you did. It was very, to me, sports are very measurable.
Tangible.
Yeah. And wakeboarding was, like I said, was so much more of an art form. And the frustration for me was real when I would go to an event and maybe I didn't get scored well, and I would go to the judges and ask them why, and they'd say, oh, well, you didn't do this, this, and this. And the next weekend I would show up and do this, this, and this. But that weekend, that's not what they were looking for. It had changed. And it literally got to a point where I would go to, Bischoff was one of the judges at the time, and I would go to him and say, hey, what you guys looking for this weekend? Help a brother out. And he'd help me out, and that was the year I made 6 of the 8 finals was, I was leaning on Bish to say, hey, what do I need to do here to get over this hump? And so it was, you're not kidding about it being it was a cultural phenomenon that it was a game I wasn't used to playing, for sure.
And Karen, I know I saw that expression on your face. So you're wanting to chime in here a little bit with this whole phase of Freddie's career that not too many people are readily recollect, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I barely do, but now he's telling stories. Things are kind of, a few things popping back in my mind, because it does seem like it was so long ago. But it's kind of wild to think about what you were. You were 3-eventing as well. You weren't just jumping. Yeah. You were 3-eventing and wakeboarding. And it did, as a skier, at that time, it did feel like, hey, there's another direction that the industry is wanting to go. And it was concerning for us skiers because it just seemed like that was where all the attention was being placed, was on wakeboarding. And I mean, I think that is something that, if you know Freddy, at all, I think it's easy to see that. I mean, he's very good at pivoting. Whatever is kind of thrown his way, he can make something of it. And I think he, he's such a natural athlete. He was very good on the trampoline and flipping and stuff like that. Likes being in the air, obviously. It was a good fit. But I also think just his mental. The mentality that he has, hey, this is an opportunity and I'm going to pursue it. So, I mean, it's just kind of interesting now to be like a little bit more, to be older and to look back on it, with a different perspective. I guess it was very cool at the time he was trying to do it. And looking back on it now when I'm older, I'm even more impressed that he tried to put it all together.
Now, I know that amongst Freddie's other pursuits are basketball. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But what other pursuits beyond the sport of water skiing do you have? Anything like basketball or anything like that?
I mean, I played very, very, I hate to even mention it because it was, I played a little bit of volleyball in school, very little. So, and then I did play basketball all the way through middle school and high school. And I always enjoyed so I played, and then I certainly, I still to this day enjoy watching more college basketball, but I definitely enjoy basketball. And, I do have to, even though Freddie, was involved with basketball, I do take credit for getting our kids involved in basketball. I think it's important. I think it's a great sport, So, yeah, basketball mainly was what I had time for.
And I remember that double-page spread in Water Ski Magazine with you trying to fake everyone into believing that you can slam.
No. Now, for that picture, it is true. We did have a small trampoline to get the photo because Doug Duquesne couldn't get the shot when I was doing it, and I missed it by, about 12 tries later, I was out of gas. So we had to resort to the trampoline. But no, in high school, I was telling Dash the other night because he's a freshman in high school and thinking about trying to make his freshman team. And, in fact, last night we were talking about it, and I said, do you think I was good at basketball? And he's like, yeah. And I said, do you think I made all my basketball teams? Yeah. And I said, I did. I made my freshman team, and I got very little playing time. My sophomore team, again, I made it. I think I got even less playing time. And my varsity years, I chose to not be on my high school team, and I played in a church league just so I could get more playing time. And it was when I got into college that we were playing intramurally and at Jay's. I mean, my God, a pickup game, twice a day kind of thing. It seemed like. So that's really when I kind of got a little better at basketball. But the thing I always hung my hat on was I got to a point where I could dunk a basketball better in a gymnasium than on the concrete courts. It's hard on a concrete court, but for a short period of time there, yeah, I could in fact dunk a basketball.
All right, then. So let's move a little bit to who you guys actually trained with. I'll go to you first, Karen, because I know pretty much the cadre of skiers that were at Bennett's at the time that you were jumping and you were going out there at like lunchtime, and just having a mini jump tournament. But Karen, did you get to ski with a comparable cadre of skiers whenever you were either at Cobal's place or Jay's?
I mean, yes and yes. Well, when I was at, as April and I grew up, forever together. So we always had that kind of built-in competition. April, obviously a very, fantastic skier herself. I mean, that was an amazing gift to me, to have her, with me every day, us pushing each other. And, at Jay's, I mean, Ben Favre was there. Freddie's sister Lori was there at the time. I mean, it was definitely more of a jump, environment. And at the time I was still 3 eventing. And I mean, if you would have asked me at that time, which way did I want to take my skiing? It was more jumping. I mean, I was more naturally gifted at slalom, but I wanted to learn to jump. And I mean, I definitely put my, the effort in, and I had a crash in 97 that set me back, towards the end of the year, just with an ankle injury. And then, wish I would have, looking back now, wish I would have just had the resources, to recover from that a little bit better. But I mean, it was definitely more jump. But, just people like, Simon Hill was there, he was on the tour. I mean, it was just, now, Freddie mentioned cruise control. I mean, having cruise control now is just totally changed everything. I mean, it's back then I remember we all would just, you would scramble. I mean, you probably remember this when you were there. We were all scrambling. We knew who the good slalom driver was. We knew who the good jump driver was. And I mean, you were to try to get, you weren't just trying to get on the water. You wanted to get on the water with that person behind the wheel. Yeah. Because you knew how important it was to get that set behind that person because it made such a difference. So, I mean, I think just being in that environment at Jay's was important, and then also at Coble's, just being able to ski with April, whether it was literally in the boat with each other or just hey, I can watch from the shore and kind of see what she does, and then that kind of gives me a little bit of a competitive air. Today that was really good for my skiing.
Lunchtimes at Jay, as I previously alluded to, were like a throwdown, weren't they, for you, Freddie, when you strapped on those jumpers?
Yeah, I mean, and then, really even after, when ski school was over, you had guys like Scott Smith that would come over from ULL and drop in. Mike Heath was there for a while. So Mike was there a lot of the times during the summer as well. But I mean, I tell the story that there was one summer, I believe, I don't think I'm exaggerating. I believe we had maybe 16 staff members.
Sounds about right.
That took off for a pro tour between, the Sherry Sloans and the Mark Shaws and the, Freddys and Karens and everything. I mean, it went from a packed house to a ghost town, on a Thursday afternoon as everybody flew out to go for the challenge rounds on Friday. And so when you had that many, and I mean, we probably had 6 or 7 of the men's jump field came from Jay's. So every day was a challenge and I mean, I think, I've always made the comment that I am the jumper I am today because of all the people that I had to jump against. And I remember doing a interview on the back of a boat out here with Jarrett Llewellyn, where, no question, I wouldn't be the jumper I am today without the rivalry that I had with Jarrett. But that I can trace that back all the way, to Jay's, to my time at NLU, to even going back even further to my time in Decatur, Illinois at the pits. I've always had that advantage. And I think, Karen had that with coming up in the community that she was in. Not only did she have April, but there were other people coming in for tournaments that, she was getting to see on a frequent enough basis. And, I talk about that with our kids, and their skiing is, hey, there's always somebody out there that you can't see that's coming, but what we want to do is expose them. And as soon as they get to a point where, okay, well, little Johnny here in my division, I outskied him. Well, great. Look a division up. Who's next? There's always somebody that you should be skiing against because somebody is chasing you all the time.
So far as rivalries, I mean, Freddie just mentioned it there. Like 6 out of the 7 people at jumpers in the challenge round basically came from Zachary, Louisiana, with 1 or 2 others, and Jarrett Llewellyn. Who did you have to compete in that similar era around about that time? I mean, like Karen Neville and the likes of those, or was Camille DeValster at the tail end of her career?
Really, no, they were. I mean, my early pro tour was more. I mean, Dina. I knew Camille. Actually, I think I went to Sammy and Camille's ski school. But I mean, there weren't too many tournaments that I skied against Camille. I can't remember obviously what year she retired, but I do remember Dina, and then there was Christy, Christy, Susie,
yeah,
Helena, Jennifer, all the tall girls.
Yeah,
the
all
tall
the
girls.
6-footers. Tony Neville.
Yeah, Tony, of course. Mainly that group was more when I was getting going on the tour. That was that group of women. Was the Christy, Susie, Helena, Tony, Jennifer.
All right, and just kind of give us a little bit of a feel. I mean, you're matched up against those rivals. I mean, how successful were you generally amongst them? I mean, you're running into 11.25 meters, 38 off most weekends, and the odd excursion into 39.
No, not back then. I mean, back then it was if you ran 35, I think if you could run maybe the challenge round, because they protected the skiers. And that group of skiers was protected. So they would, there were 2 spots on Friday. So we would challenge and then amongst that group was good skiers. So, of course, depending on the site and the conditions and things like that. I mean, if you got through 35 at that time, you were most likely going to make it to the semifinals. And then, I think they maybe cut to 4, and I mean, I don't think I ever made it into those 4. I was never that caliber of skier at that time. Honestly, I was shorter. I was one of the shorter skiers, and, and they all definitely told me about it.
Yeah.
And, it was, the conditions were tough. And, it wasn't till really the 99, 2000, I started kind of breaking through. Through the Masters, I started actually, over the years have skied very well, like as far as making it into the finals of the Masters, and all the years I've skied, I've made, majority of the finals in there. I'd done well on Robin Lake. And I would say that was kind of some, my breakthrough was when I finally started qualifying for the Masters. At that point,
it's worth stating at that time to qualify for the Masters, they took the top 4.
Something like that. It was like top 3 off the world ranking, top 3 off the Pro Tour, top 3 off the World Cup. There was like these different lists.
So no LCQ or anything like that.
There was an LCQ, but there's an asterisk with that. And I'll tell that. But it was, so you had the top 4 of the World Cup, top 3 of the Pro Tour, top 3 maybe on the world rankings list. But you got to know there's a tremendous amount of overlap in those. If you were the top 3 on the Pro Tour, you were probably also the top 3 in the World Cup. And so
like Maple could qualify in every single.
Exactly. And that was a goal that you wanted to do that as an athlete, because you were blocking other competitors, from making it to the Masters, and it just kind of made that job a little easier there. And then when you start talking about the LCQs at that time at Travers, what you have to know is at that time it was arguably the greatest jump lake in the world and arguably the hardest slalom lake in the world. And there was always a score that you had to, a minimum that you had to set. And I mean, year after year after year, nobody could meet that score. You couldn't go, somebody would go and win, but you didn't meet the minimum requirement to go to the Masters because it was the hardest place in the world to slalom. So
yeah, for a man-made lake.
For a man-made lake, it was insane.
Very strange. I don't know.
But that, when for the audience at home, when you hear, this was a time where running 35 off was a big deal. You have to understand, you have to travel back in time and imagine the places that we were skiing at with, concrete walls down the side and bounce block and rollers and the odd occasional boat just choosing to go by. And there's a show. We're not stopping. Sorry for your misfortune. The buoys were size of beach balls, right? Because you couldn't have little buoys. You wouldn't have been able to see them with the white caps going over them. The boats had wakes that were, look closer to today's wakeboard boats than they do our ski boats. I mean,
so there were more tournaments back in those days that were just an absolute hot mess so far as the conditions.
As an athlete, I mean, we used to have an expression that you got moonbud. And it was, that was a real thing for people that would go I try to explain this to people, you get on, the first thing you do is you put, at that time it was probably $2,000 in today's dollars. It's, you're going to lay $5,000 on a table and get a plane ticket, a hotel, cabs, Ubers, whatever, food to go over there, entry fees and everything. And you go over there and you may just get this random 2-foot roller that comes down the Yara, and you don't run your opening pass, have a couple of beers and get on a plane and fly back home. I've always told people we're more professional gamblers than we are, professional water skiers, because that's what we're doing is we're laying money on a table that we're going to go and make more money, right? But we used to call it getting moomba'd. And I remember 1996, I believe, was the year that Carl went undefeated on the U.S. Pro Tour. 7 of the 8 Pro Tour stops were white cap tailwinds. And if it was a white cap tailwind, it was a white cap run for the slalom skiers too. They were out there skiing in absolute garbage. And, but we weren't happy about it, but it was what was expected. We weren't complaining about it either. You just went to work. But so those scores, when they were out there running through 35 off and getting into 38 at that time, I mean, that's the equivalent of running 38 and getting into 39, or running 39 and getting into 41, as far as I'm concerned. Because I mean, it was, to say it was challenging would be the understatement of the year.
So Karen, how, in your best recollection, how many times would you say you've gotten moomba'd?
I have one good memory of it.
There's a difference between getting moomba'd and getting screwed.
Yeah,
okay.
I did have a not so fun experience. My first Moomba, and it was a unusual situation. They had Moomba, and it was also a World Cup. So we had 2 different rounds. Well, we had. It was cumulative.
Well, Moomba.
The story's not going to be great. I'm not going to remember it.
Moomba, you had a cut. And then the World Cup was a cumulative score they added the scores from the 2 rounds.
And my first round, I went around a buoy, and for some reason, and I fell, like it was a half of a buoy, no questions asked. And then I'm swimming in, and I'm like, why did they just give me 2? I fell around 3, and no video review, no nothing, and that was all she wrote. So the next round, I came up short. You guessed it, a half a buoy
cumulatively
to help me get into the World Cup final. So needless to say, it was not a fun ride back to the hotel. So yes, that was my number one Moomba experience. But other than that, it was, everything else was.
And I can still to this day remember having a conversation with Andy Mapple. Like, we went and talked to Andy and what do we do? And he had that real loud, hard laugh. And then he just said, you got moomba'd.
Yeah. Welcome to the club, or whatever,
Welcome to Moomba.
Yeah.
You'll get them next time. Yeah. And, when you're in the moment, you're thinking, no, that's not good enough. But, now here we are, whatever it is, 28 years later, and still a little upset about it.
Okay. Aside from Moomba, you two have traveled the world, especially with the World Cup back in the day with the IWWF. And I vividly remember you trying to actually take a halfway, I wouldn't even say a decent cut at the jump in some river in China. I think I still have a very, very vivid memory of that. And I think you were there as well, possibly.
No, I decided to skip the China trips, other than the Worlds. But so I wouldn't have been there.
No, yeah, Karen did China once, and that was enough. I had a couple of trips. We didn't have a lot of luck with our jump stops there. We had one World Cup where we showed up, and I didn't even get to practice. We didn't even make it to the prelims. They had a storm come through, and the ramp disappeared. And when I say it disappeared, I mean as in they couldn't find it. It's on the bottom of that lake somewhere, and it was a huge lake. And so Scotty Ellis, joked that he made $250 because he sold his sling on that trip. The rest of us didn't even unzip our jump bags. But the other one, the one you're referring to, it was actually a very cool. It was the right idea. And, that was the thing, when you're there in the moment and you're scared to death for your life and your career, it's hard to be excited about, some of the conditions that we found ourselves in with the World Cup. But basically we were in a canal that had concrete walls on both sides. And they had a jump there, and the first 2 or 3 jumps that you took in the event, the rollers hadn't made it back yet, and they had some attempt at a bounce back control, but by about the 5th or 6th lap of the lake, it basically became a bathtub that was just so beyond safe it wasn't even funny. But we had to do a show. And so we went out there, and I think a lot of the guys did some singles. And I remember, Des and Kuno were getting pretty anxious because obviously the Chinese had, they knew what 3/4 and doubles looked like. And so I went out there and did an easygoing 3/4 or double, and I just basically bounced onto the ramp and made it about 55 meters through the fist, and we celebrated, baby. But, again, in the moment, those were not fond memories. They were, because you're scared to death of what's going to happen. You're worried about what are the finances on this? How are they going to work out? Are we going to get paid? Are we not going to get paid? Now you look back on it, and, those are some of the memories that you'll probably are the most vivid, again, because of the fear that you were dealing with at the time. But those were, we had a chance to travel the world together, and see some of the most amazing places and the most amazing people. And again, we were not on vacation though, right? Like you're stressed out, you're there to do a job and all that, but we can look back on, there are a lot of, amazing, wonderful memories and a lot of amazing, wonderful people that we met along the way, that, we didn't have to do it by going into the armed forces or anything like that. It was a cool path.
All right, then. So, obviously, it definitely took a different type of skier back in the day to deal with those types of conditions, however rough they were, however subpar they were. Comparing that to today's athlete that's coming up, coming through, and putting their imprint on the top of the water ski standings, water ski pro tour, or what have you. Do either of you believe that the skiers today are lacking the toughness that used to be so prevalent back then?
No, I wouldn't. I personally wouldn't say that. I'd give them a benefit of the doubt, because there's a lot of hey, when you're in your 20s, there's a go for it attitude that just by design, that's what a 20-something-year-old, that's more of what's in them. But no, I don't know that I would say that. I think it's just, I don't know if opportunity is the word, but the circumstances just haven't necessarily been there.
Well, I think it's exposure. So, think about the fact that, when they had the Worlds in Malaysia, there were people losing their minds. That was one of our best, safest, nicest World Cup stops. That was we had this amazing place. We were staying right there on site. Karen won that event not long after having a baby. When I say not long, as in 3-4 months after having a baby, going out there and skiing in those types of conditions. And, I won the World Cup jump there that year. But again, we had been exposed to so much of that. The group of people that were the younger generation that you're talking about now, when they were exposed to it, some of their heads were ready to explode. But it's not because they're not tough. It's because they hadn't been exposed to it before. They weren't used to it. If you would have taken us at that time and put us in what that kind of a culture shock, what the Malaysia culture shock was for this generation, if you'd have done that to us, we would have been skiing in the ocean, or whatever like that. But we would have struggled with that kind of a change in exposure as well. So I don't think it's a toughness. I think it's a, like I say, just being exposed to what the expectations are, or what conditions are. I mean, quite honestly, if we just went back to the old buoys, people would lose their minds. If we went back to the old boats, if we went back to, there's so many things that you could immediately and instantly make the younger generation completely uncomfortable, but they'd adapt to it. They'd get used to it. They would, and then they wouldn't be. And then we'd be talking about how tough they are. So I don't think it's a toughness issue. I do think it's just an exposure issue.
I mean, it just, the tournaments were just, that's where they were. I mean, we didn't know any different. The leaders of the sport, as far as I knew, as somebody who was like a young and up and comer, I never heard them complain. I almost think they kind of, you sort of wore it like a badge, like, hey, I can go out and ski in that. But, if you look at, I mean, there were so few man-made lakes at that time. So we just didn't know any different. And it was, I mean, if you probably compared everybody at that time, if you compared where they practiced, I mean, they weren't probably all that nice of practice sites either, so it's just where the sport was at that time.
All right, then I can certainly gel with that. I was exposed to a good few of those those horrid sites back in the day. But let's try and pivot a little bit to something that most skiers are trying to avoid at all costs, but would ordinarily encounter them anyway: injuries. Between the two of you, you've had long skiing careers, and you've largely avoided the most serious of injuries, like the career-ending type. And I mean when I recall you actually trying to describe the jump event to the good folks, it was on a Mastercraft video. It's you position the boat away from the jump from where you're cutting, and you say if you hit the side curtain, you're just a split second away from doing something else, So you're quite self-aware in regards to avoiding situations that could potentially be career-ending. But let's go on to the premise of how you've been able to stay on the water for as long as you have, and what have you done to achieve that?
For me personally, I have suffered a fair amount of injury throughout the years. I mean, I've done both knees, so I've had both ACLs done, and then pretty significant ankle injury, and then had the two kids. They're not an injury, but it does obviously set you back. So I mean, for me, I think I didn't come from a culture that stressed a ton of skiing. I didn't it's hard to know exactly what someone else is doing, but I do get the feeling that there were a lot of people that skied a heck of a lot more than I did. I mean, I had an off season, being in North Carolina, I stopped skiing in October and didn't return until April or, probably, March, April. Would do a couple, like the Christmas, the vacation times I'd spend maybe at a ski school or something like that. So I had a significant off season, did other things. And then, even when I was down here in Florida, I didn't have necessarily a significant off season, but I definitely took time off. So I don't know. I mean, I don't think Freddie would say that I'm an over skier. An over trainer, over skier. And I think that's helped throughout the years. I've done a good job of listening to my body. And then with the injuries, I think I, did a good job of, doing what needed to be done. I went ahead and, I could have waited and maybe not got my my knees repaired or whatever, but I decided to go ahead and take care of it so that it didn't give me, trouble later.
Well, so I'm going to make Karen a little uncomfortable here, but I think this needs to be stated. Avoiding injury and all the things that she just said are definitely, I mean, she has worked incredibly hard to stay fit, to, stay strong, not overtrain, balance that out, balance. But I've been around a lot of people who, you see them Sports Center specials, somebody gets hurt and they look how hard they train and they fight back and they come back and, they got back sooner than expected. When I broke Karen's ankle in 1996, right before the Patty Classic, she crashed right before the tournament. We put her on a plane, iced it all the way there, and she jumped the first round basically on a broken ankle. And then we got home, and then the second round of x-rays, it was really broken by then, so it was easy to see. So, that was a delay, right? But, in 1999, she blew out her right knee, was back skiing. Wait, 99 was the Worlds. Is that when you skied the Worlds with no ACL?
That was 01.
That was 01. Okay, so 99.
Missed the Worlds. Yeah.
Missed the Worlds. Mm-hmm. Did the rehab, was back on tour.
The next year.
Next year. So what, 7 months? Training within 6 months, basically on a slalom ski, within 7 months, back on the skis, jumping. And, by the way, at that time, they introduced 5.5-foot ramp, and we were ski flying. So she's coming back from and I mean, again, anybody else up to that time, if you were back in a year, because again, remember the time of the medicine and that was insane. And at 7 months, she's ski flying, which was terrifying on its own. And she's having to do it on a surgically repaired knee 7 months in. 01, she does the other knee, holds off on the surgery, goes to the World Championships in Italy, makes the finals, finishes fifth on, no ACL, comes home, has the surgery in 01. So that would have been October of 01. In March of 02, she won the Moomba Masters, which was her first professional slalom tournament. So what is that? November, December, January, February, March, 5 months later. Right? And she did jump some. And but at that point in time, we were like, hey, this winning slalom thing is pretty cool, so let's focus on that. But, when Dash was born on March 17th, did you ski that Masters?
No, skip.
No,
Okay, so what year was this?
That was 09.
This was 09. And, I don't think I'm TMI here, but, had a C-section and we were right up to the day of leaving, trying to make a decision of whether or not she should or could ski and chose not to. Fast forward, in 5 years, in 2014, she has a C-section on April 2nd and skied the Masters that year and missed the finals by a quarter of a buoy. Right? Mm-hmm. So when I tell you that, I was there in 99 when we would drive out to Claremont and she would do therapy for an hour and a half, because it's only supposed to be an hour, but Karen had to do a little extra. And then we would go from there and go to the gym, and Freddie was going to work out, but Karen worked out the whole time next to him. When I saw all the work and all the focus, and, she didn't necessarily keep herself from injury. She just fought through it like nobody I've ever seen. I could never fathom coming back and working as hard as she did in those times. And again, the thing that you're fighting is just this fear. And so for some people, it might be hard to understand. But, when this is what you do for a living, this is what you've put so much of your entire life's focus, all your energy, your identity is wrapped up into it. And that, no disrespect to the industry, but next man up, meaning you lose that contract and somebody else just slid into your spot. And that's that's the difference between you being able to keep doing this or not. I don't think a lot of people understand that. And she has never gotten the attention or the credit that she deserved for. We're still talking about, with all due respect, we're talking about people who have 2 and 3 year olds and we're impressed that they're back in skiing. She had a 2-month-old and was there skiing. But again, it was a different time, and it might not have been the best thing to do. In all seriousness, we probably pushed the envelope, but you've got to understand the mentality it takes to push that envelope is why she's still here skiing today at 49 years old against the children of the people she was skiing against, in 2000.
Wow, putting that in perspective, oh my word, that just boggles the mind, really. But during that whole answer, you touched upon something that I'm so glad that you raised: ski flying. That scourge that seemed to be planted in amongst water ski jumping with the sole purpose of taking someone out from the sky and then dropping them as hard as possible, while trying to jump the length of a football field. Now, let me ask you first, Karen, your experience of ski flying. I mean, it was just the thing going on with the sport of that time. You know, I mean, if you wanted to jump professionally, you need to do it off a faster boat, longer line, modified jump, ski flying. Before I ask Freddie about his experiences with ski flying, which I think are pretty much legendary in the first and the second instances, but what about you?
Yeah, our experience with ski flying's going to be a little different. But hey, at least, I mean, I did do it.
You did it.
I mean, yeah, it kind of goes back to when we were having that conversation about Freddie wakeboarding, and I made the comment about, pivoting because that's what the industry was doing. That's what the industry was doing. And so if you wanted to keep playing the game, and I did, you needed to ski fly. And for me, it was tough, like Freddie said, because I was coming back from ACL and, the base of our traditional jumping, they had already made some changes. We were going faster. And then to have to turn around and then, learn to ski fly. But, I guess you could say, I was at least around, I had the fortunate, experience to be able to be around a good group of people that, if anybody knew what they were doing, it was them. I was around, obviously Freddie, and then, Bruce and Tony, and they were amazing, helping all of us get going and trying to, give us tips and figure it out. And, we all of us like rode our skis and had access to the boats. So, I was very fortunate in that. But yeah, it was just something that if you wanted to pursue professional jumping at that time, you needed to dabble in the, and commit to doing the ski flying. I think we also wanted to just see what it was all about. It wasn't, again, if you're a jumper, you kind of have a certain mentality anyway. And then, to try to take it to, hey, let's just see what this feels like, and let's all have fun doing this together. It was an amazing time looking back on it, an amazing experience, a lot of good memories.
Yeah. But again, there was a little bit I feel like there was a little bit of that stolen from you because we were dealing with the knee at that time. And so like just riding your skis was hurting. Then now you're riding your skis at 40 on a 90-foot line or whatever it was. And then, oh, by the way, now you're slamming into the ramp. And so again, all of the...
maybe a little extra anxiety for me, but
waking up on any given Tuesday was a big deal.
I would probably go so far as to say you probably had more fun driving ski fly than you did actually hitting the ramp with ski fly, which brings us on to Freddie.
We, when that was happening, I think the original ski flying, I believe, was actually done on this lake. Bruce was involved, and I think Scott and Carl Roberts and some of those guys came over here, and that was, pre-Freddie. And they kind of laid out the groundwork in that. But when we were doing in that time where we did it on the tour for a year, when we were doing more ski fly events, Bruce would usually end up with the Nautique, and he would bring it here because he was training here, and I would end up with the Mastercraft. So this was kind of the mecca, Lake Huckleberry was the ski fly mecca of training. And, we have some hysterical stories of, Jarrett Llewellyn ending up in the cattails down there because Britta wouldn't curve out to the right far enough.
We were all learning to drive.
All learning together, yeah. Franz Oberleitner would jump, 235 feet, but couldn't ride it out because he lands like a sack of potatoes, We had some young guys that came here, and there was one young man, I cannot remember his name, and I think he may have come here with Franz Oberleitner. And we told Franz...
Carla Armour or Daniel Dobringer.
No, it wasn't Daniel. I know Daniel. But it was a young man, a real young man. The kid was maybe 16, 17 years old. And I remember Bruce telling him, Franzi, he's not ready. And Franzi, oh, no, I think he's ready. And Bruce said, well, whatever you do, don't let him ride in the boat first. Make him go just right as jumpers. No, he's going to jump. He's going to jump. So they put him in the boat, and I don't remember if he rode in the boat for me or Bruce or whoever it was. But that young man got out of the boat, walked up to and sat in the car, and he wouldn't get out of the car. He was not going to go even try it. And that was the most terrifying thing with ski flying, was literally riding in the boat and watching, because we were all wobbling and bobbling, and you're moving around, and because on a 105-foot line, once you move that handle 3 inches, and it's like a wave action down the rope to the pylon and back, and then all of a sudden you just start moving. But the boat just sounds like it's going to fly apart. I mean, it's just screaming down the lake. And when you actually were behind the boat, it was almost smooth and had, I don't know if melodic is the word I'm looking for, melody or whatever it is. It wasn't nearly as violent as it was in the boat, but we had earplugs and headsets to because the boats were so loud. I remember the guys, we would start the boat up and start jumping, and all of a sudden there would be people down here standing on the side of the lake watching, and they were students and skiers coming from Lake Hancock, because they could hear us warming the boat up. It was that loud. They, 3 miles away, they could hear us running. So
if the wind was blowing the right direction.
Yeah, so they'd jump in a car and come over and watch the ski fly practice, because they knew we were getting, something was about to go down. So it was an unbelievable time. And I hated when we were ski flying everywhere. That was a terrible idea, because very few places were set up to do it. But man, did I hate when we lost it at the Masters. Because Larry Meddock had that facility always set up right. He controlled the rollers. He always got the water level down in that. And then, once he left, it was probably time to let it go, because ski flying was so temperamental in every aspect of, obviously the wind conditions, but the water conditions were, so much more critical than anything else. And that's, we just showed the boys, I don't know, it was like 1998 or something like that, or I can't remember what year it was. It would have been later than that, 2002, something like that. It was a ski fly finals and I took a massive crash. And of course the kids have 1,000 questions as to, well, what's that feel like? Why'd that happen? And you're just like, bad things happen, man. But yeah, no, it was, that was an amazing time for sure.
And that concludes part one of my conversation with Freddy Krueger and Karen Truelove. The second part will be coming your way very soon with more stories and anecdotes that you will not want to miss. So until then, this is Tony Lightfoot saying ciao for now.
Thank you for listening to the TWBC podcast. Be sure to check out our website at waterskibroadcasting.com. Links to our presence on major social media platforms can be found there, as well as updates to our webcast and this podcast. Duplication or rebroadcasting of this broadcast without written consent of TWBC is prohibited. Subscribe to us on your favorite podcast platform and be sure to join us next time for the next edition of the TWBC podcast.